our suspension feeder, envelope feeder, and feed number 9 remittance through here. Now that can be a very difficult task. Some of the things that we've changed on this machine versus the other machines is you see this slide rail system right here. The other one had bilateral adjustment plate underneath it. It had 2 knobs out here where you could skew the machine back and forth, but it made it impossible for you to pick the machine back up by the back of this feeder. Many times our customers were picking it up here and getting all that stuff messed up in there, and it made the machine very loose on the stand. So one of the new improvements that we've made is to put this slide rail on here. It's an expensive addition, really, for us, but it made the machine way, way, way more stable. The second thing I want to point out is this new photocell eye on here. You can see it's a very pencil thin. Right there, it's very pencil thin, and right there is the eye locator on it. We're able to slide it up and down inside there, as well as move it in and out. So it gives us way more control over our pile height than we've had in the past. And it used to be that this setting, as far as height-wise, was set, and you couldn't change that setting, and that was a problem. So what I'll start with here first today is to change these over to our remittance kit. There's separate different wheels that go on here, and there's also a different jogger arm that goes on the front of this thing. Now you'll get a remittance kit. It'll come into a bag, something similar to this, and the parts will be on the inside. There's really just 3 different components in there. The 2 new arms. Now if you have the already received one of these, you may have had a longer jog on this bottom wire here. The new ones, you want this wire just to be just past the edge of that front roll, just like it's made right there. The first thing we have to do is take the old ones off. You do that simply by removing the screw on that side, and then put the new ones on. And they will come with screws in them in case you lose the others, but it's the same screw that you can use on both these. Simply put it right back in the same place. Tighten that up for right now. Do the same thing on the other side. Take this screw out. And put the new arm on. Okay. Next thing we have to do is change this jogger arm. Since these are smaller diameter wheels, we have to take this arm off. Put the new arm on. Now for those of you already who have a remittance kit, this is an adjustment that you've already made, but we're also doing something else here now. We're going to take out this arm in here and put a new arm in. Has a longer stem on it than the existing one does. So we raise this up. Pull that straight and put the new one back in. You'll have to have your belt tracks wide enough apart so you can get this fed in there from the bottom. You have to get that arm lined up to fit in that hole, raise it up, and then put the snap ring back in. That snap ring keeps it from going down any further than it already is. At that point, those 2 components are now in, and we can start fanning the envelopes and getting them ready to run. Good practice is just to put these parts back in this bag right away so we don't lose them. Now, the reason we changed this arm is when you go to jog these or to fan these number 9 remits, it's very difficult to get the pile height high enough so that there's enough pressure down on these belts to make these drive through there. So we actually want to have a smaller pile. So what I will do is I'll take and start feeding the envelopes through. I'll take a smaller stack of envelopes and jog them this way to get them started and lay them in there. That's how I'll start the jogging process. So I only want a stack of these that's about an inch or an inch and a quarter thick. Jog them this direction and slide them under. You notice I push them in as far as I can to those rollers to start with right away, so it has a good stop on the back. And we just repeat this process till we get the machine loaded. Now what we're trying to do with this video is to show you the whole process. So you get an idea of what kind of time it takes to do it and the things that we have to do to make this work for us. Once again, what we're trying to do is create a good shingle on these envelopes and then slide them in up underneath the other ones. The height of this, we want to keep lower than what we would normally have so we can have a smaller pile going through here at any given time. One of the problems that we routinely run into is that these envelopes want to slide and move away. So by doing this in smaller stacks, you can control that. We want to get as even as we can of a stack coming out that front. And fanning is the key. The better the fan, the more uniform the fan is, the better results you're going to have in the field. I had a printer tell me the other day, he said, on this machine, neatness counts. And it does. It's important that we fan these things properly. And you'll pick up your own fanning technique as you start to do this. Everyone will have something slightly different, but what we want to create is a nice uniform stack along this bottom and keep them jogged around that back plate. If we can keep that part looking good, before we start feeding them through there, our success rate will go way up. Because of the way these envelopes are made, the body of the envelope is so much thicker than the flat that what happens is when they go through the feeder, they will want to raise up and create a high pile on the front. And by the smaller you can keep this stack, the lower you can keep this going through there, you can minimize that. It's important for us to get these drive belts virtually directly underneath these rollers so that when they put pressure down, we're putting it down directly and it doesn't curl the envelope quite so much. So as we turn the power on and start feeding them through, we'll go ahead and let them run all the way up to the front. I'm going to shut it off right there at this point. Feed some more envelopes in so I don't lose my edge on the back. And push good flush. Now you can see where the front of those envelopes gets a really high stack here. That's a bigger stack than I typically want. So we can adjust that by lowering this sensor down to get a smaller stack on front. Now we want to try to make sure that we get it even from side to side And we can adjust those with our adjustment arms up here in front. You can adjust them up and down to get that. Now we want this stack to be as flat as we can get it. Now just by their very nature, this end is going to want to be higher than than this back edge, because it's two thicknesses here and one thickness there. At this point, we're ready to slide it into the press and start setting it up. So I'll roll this thing forward into our multi. We are a little bit high, so I will lower the stand down just a little bit. We like to come in low and back the first time it's through. You can see how the envelope's caught up on the fingers there. Okay, now we don't want this to be tight in between those guides. The envelopes need to be able to flow up and down freely in between here. If you get this too tight, then they'll jam up while you get them in there. At this point, we're going to go ahead and lock the wheel in to its location and make sure it gets held against the press so that no longer moves. We have pushed it up to there. We are in there square. At this point, I'll go ahead and load some more envelopes into the back so that the back is full. And what that longer arm has allowed us to do, it's allowed us to lower the pile of envelopes coming in. Normally, you would have to have this stack of envelopes at least an inch higher than this. By putting a longer arm in there with that spring on, it keeps pressure on them anyways. That's what makes everything drive forward. Once again, we'll just continue until we fill this up. And then we'll be ready to run. And, you know, as you go through this process, each time you do it, you'll get a little bit quicker and a little bit faster about how you do these things. Especially once you know what you got. Now you can see right now that we're a good ½ inch below the sheet separators up there in front. So we know that the machine is going to have to come up to get to that point. First thing I'll do is I'll turn the machine back on and make sure that our eye is set at the height we want it. At this point, I'll begin to jack the stand up and bring it up to our sheet separators up there in front. I'll hold it there and I'll lock the feeder in at this location. And then I think we're ready to start the press up and start running some through. Go ahead and get the press started up and get it ready to run. Turn the press on to start with, and then we'll turn the vacuum on. I want you to take a look at how this is fanned. It's important to have this uniformity at the bottom. You can see where we got a couple of hiccups there. Those should work out as they feed up through the feeder, these little places. The more uniform you can make that, the better the envelopes are going to feed. So at this point I'll go ahead and looks like I've got to bring this right side up a little bit. So straight across from those feet. We want this back of the stack to be uniform. This jogger arm is just slightly putting pressure on the back of the envelope. Alright? And it's pushed past these rollers, so only the spring can touch that top envelope. That's the only thing that can touch it. At this point, I'm going to take this other side and adjust it forward a little bit. So it's a little bit closer to the envelope. That gets our spring to the back side of that envelope right there and there. Okay? The only pressure we want to get to that envelope is that very little bit of the spring. So at this point, I'll go ahead and turn on the vacuum. See the envelopes will start to advance here. As there's a call for more envelopes. Now, looks like we're a little bit low. That's why it's not picking them up. From time to time, you'll have to do this. Raise this up. Get it back up to the sheet separator. Now at this point I'm going to shut it off and show you one more thing that we have to add to this machine that helps make it so everything works better. We developed a hold down device that allows us to put some pressure on both sides of that jogger so that this has got something solid to push up against. It fits on in front of the jogger. Got some little thumb screws that hold it down on here. And then these clamps can be adjusted in next to the jogger so that it holds that paper in the right spot as the jogger pushes it up to that point. Go ahead and start it back up here. So by using this longer stem in here, we're able to keep down pressure on this to keep it moving forward. And by being able to lower our eye that far down, we can get a really small stack on the back of the This is the same basic setup that I use for the number 9. This is a different kind of remittance envelope that we have. I want to show you this setup so you can see it. Once again, we have the longer arm, which makes it so we can put a smaller stack in here. Now, when you get a big stack of these, they're very, very hard to shingle and to keep in there. You still have to do it in small batches, about an inch at a time, and stick them in there. You can't run big clumps of it through there. And then what's important is, if you look at this side view over here, is that these bottoms are shingled relatively evenly when you look along the bottom side of that. And that's how the loading would go. Then on the front of this, we have the same jogger arm, but it's hitting back here on the tab, away from the rest of those envelopes. And we'll give this a shot and see how this runs. Now we can adjust more pile or less pile by raising the machine or the envelope itself. But as they lift up, that jogger gradually moves them forward one at a time. Now it looks to me like I could have a little bit higher pile height. That would be productive. By having these straps on each side, here and here, it holds this lip down so that this jogger can do its job and get them all pushed up to that back plate. Okay, look at the other end. I'm going to go ahead and shut this off now and raise that pile height. See if that helps a little bit. Now to raise this pile height, there's a couple of things I need to do. First off, I need to lower this feeder down. And what I'm trying to do is create a little bit bigger pile up in front. So I lower this down first, because I'm already up against the fingers. And then I raise the sensor. The sensor's in this plate over here. I just grab hold and I pull it up so I get more height in there. So there's a thicker pile of envelopes up in front to work with. Give me a little bit more pile in back. I'm going to take a little bit of pressure off these back fingers. Now I'm going to raise the whole machine back up to the bottom of the stiffness. Keep separated. Lock it in a little high. Back this off a little bit. And just a trust up high. Drop that now. And we'll start it back up. Now what that did for me, gave me a little bit higher pile here and back. Okay. Put the vacuum back on here. Put it up. Give me a little bit higher pile. Once again, not quite high enough for that to set. I'd like the pile height to be up a little bit.
Okay.